Good afternoon once more, colleagues. Hope that others, they don't know me. I'm Khethang Motsamai. I'm from the University of Pretoria. I no longer work for Motheo. And we're going to do presentation, but please, after the presentation, once more, you fill your Google form and you submit it. But you submit immediately, and then they can score marks, or they can check average of the marks that you gave me, and then put it in my results. Colleagues, can we please introduce ourselves? Just tell us who you are, your occupation, and campus or unit where you come from. Where is that?
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Motheo. I am an acting senior lecturer in Bloemfontein campus.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Motheo. I'm an acting head of department in Bloemfontein campus.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Motheo Clifton. I am the head of faculty in hospitality and tourism.
Afternoon, colleagues. My name is Motheo Lebona, Assistant Director, Curriculum Implementation, Central Office Academic Division. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khethang Motsamai, and I am a former student at Motheo College, Hillside campus.
Good afternoon, my name is Khethang. I was a student in Motheo in the campus.
Thanks very much, colleagues. I want to make a disclaimer before we start with the presentation. The other colleagues did strategic plan based on their campuses, but my strategic plan is for the entire college. So don't be surprised when you see exorbitant figures. It's because we want to cover all 8 campuses with the new programs that you're going to introduce according to the strategic plan. And I'm going to take 2 approaches when I make presentation. Mr. Silon is not yet here. Mr. Silon, are you back?
Yes, sir.
Are you back in that? Can you please introduce yourself, your occupation, and your campus? That is, unmute and speak.
I'm Mr. Silani from Motheo College. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Silani from Motheo College.
All right, thanks very much in that.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Donson Mokwa, HOD for Business Studies. Thank you.
Okay, I was explaining that we're going to take 2 approaches for this strategic plan. The first one, we're going to compare South Africa and the world. Then secondly, we're going to talk about what we need to do in Motheo for us to be able to achieve the objectives of our strat plan. Just a brief introduction, colleagues. Remember that TVET stands for Technical, Vocational and Education and Training Sector. And we have been facing with many changes up to this one on the landscape of the TVET colleges. That is why we have to come up with another strategic plan that we have to use in order to achieve the objectives, new objectives that we have, covering the objectives of the GNU. Now the first one will check Africa continent and South Africa. When we check it from the perspective of the mandate that we have from the government. For sure we are familiar with the picture of the guys that are there. I can see that Mr. Monai is there also, a plumber. Now, the unemployment rate in South Africa is really very high. That's the reason why the government gave a mandate to TVET colleges to train people that are employable. That when they leave the college, will be able to go and be absorbed somewhere. That's the reason why the first one is unemployment and skills shortages. Then support of the government is to develop the policies that we need to use in order to achieve the objectives that we need to do. We have the NSDP, National Development Plan. We have NSDP, National Skills Development Plan, and we focus mostly on WIL, work integrated learning, because the approach that we take is that we need to train the students theory and practical and take them to workplace so that they are employable when they leave the college. Now the African Union strategy also advocates on that, because when we talk of it concentrates more on sustainable development, future ready workforce, global competitiveness. Remember, the technology, it makes the world come closer, and it's one of the mechanisms that you can use to eradicate unemployment in South Africa. Remember, you can work in South Africa for an American company and you can get money while you are still in South Africa. You don't need to relocate and go to America. Now, there are international trends that we look into when we develop our new strategy. ILO and UNESCO framework emphasize continuous development for workforce competitiveness. And secondly, the other trends internationally is the 4IR and digital transformation. Then remember that the courses that we do, students has to go for workplace. And honestly speaking, we don't have a lot of companies in Free State. As a result, we need to use 4IR in order to keep that skill that the students has to do. I mean, we have a lot of them: artificial intelligence, visual reality. I'm sure we're familiar with visual reality. It's those big goggles that we use. Normally, they have the software, then you can put them and learn how to take out the engine and put it back. And then you can use your hands and everything. When you finish, you can go and do a car. Then another benchmark, we benchmark with the other countries, like Germans' dual approach system. Germans, they use classroom learning and workplace at the same time. They have a memorandum of understanding with companies, but remember that Germany is much more industrialized than South Africa. So a lot of their students, they get employment as they complete their studies. Then we have another model from Finland, which is called work-based model. It's also the same as the dual model. So throughout the presentation, we will be talking about those two models that I've just highlighted. Now we have to consider the socio-political factors that are in South Africa. Remember, I talked about the unemployment rate. Unemployment rate is very high in South Africa. Briefly, unemployment in South Africa is at 3.4% at the moment. When we do the presentation, it was 32.2, but now it's 3.4 at the moment. It's going higher and higher. And out of that, the 3.2, 62.4 is youth that are unemployed. And 70% of them, more than 70% of them, are women. So it means every year, the unemployment is going higher and higher and higher. That's the reason why we have to skill the people that are ready for the workplace. Now, the government also put funding and policies in order to advocate for the new programs. They also encourage the colleges to have PPP, public-private partnerships, in order to at least share the cost. The private companies, they partner with the public companies so that at least they can share the resources or share the capital or the money that is needed. And inequality and accessibility. The education system, it was uneven before. Now we have to address those inequalities and have access for all South Africans, including those that are differently abled. Now the last one, globalization and collaboration. We need to make partners with other countries. Like, for example, Botswana is near, we can have Ghana, can have Zimbabwe, can have all the countries that are near, do collaboration so that at least we can share the resources. Now, the education landscape in TVET has changed drastically from the way we used to when we started at TVET colleges. Like I said, we need collaboration with higher education for articulation pathways. We need to make sure that other students, when they leave the college, they can go for workplace, they can go for higher education, or they can open their own business. Industry collaboration, dynamic partnerships. In the new system, we need to make partnership with industry so that we can be able to accommodate our students for workplace training. Once more, digital transformation and online learning, innovative learning models. By using technology, you can be able to reach the whole world. You can study your master's in Harvard whilst you are still in South Africa and graduate in South Africa. The curriculum innovation and competency-based learning. Our curriculum has changed drastically because it's now competence-based. Dada Kosana, you are welcome. Dada Kosana, we are almost done, don't worry. Now another thing that we check is the mega trends. The mega trends is the trends that the world is following in developing their workforce capacity. Now, according to Prof. Beckman, 2020 podcast discussion, as Prof. Beckman is from the University of Pretoria, talked about digital transformation. I already talked about how digital can influence our education system. Automation and artificial intelligence are also touched in that we need to keep the gap between the theory and the workplace. Sustainability and green technology. We need to be advanced and try to be sustainable and concentrate more on green technology. The most important one is that we want to develop entrepreneurs and people who are innovative in society. Now we're going to look into the new approach now. I'm going to concentrate much more on the colleges, the TVET colleges in South Africa. And colleagues, you'll see that I didn't specify the college name at all, anywhere, because we have to make it anonymous as possible, so that when others look into my presentation, they can't say Motheo is lacking or Motheo is advanced. But we're going to concentrate much more on dual approach to vocational education. Dual approach is that one that I explained, but we'll delve deeper into it as the presentation goes on. Now, we are a leading public TVET college in the Free State. We all know that Motheo is the best in the Free State. Even in the country is one of the best. We are responding to the skills mismatch and unemployment and 4IR demands. Now we're going to use the model called dual approach. I said before that dual approach is the new approach that is used by Germans. Germans, they make partnerships with companies. And then companies, they also fund the students. All the students that come to the college are employed. Now they get salaries from the companies. And then at colleges, they do the institutional learning, which is the theory learning. And at workplace, they do workplace training, so that we can match the two. These are informed by global best practice and local stakeholders consultation. The rationale behind this model is that countries such as Germany, I talked about it, Switzerland and Singapore have demonstrated the effective of dual vocational education system through improved school to work transition, through reduced youth unemployment, the higher employer satisfaction, alternation between classroom and workplace, and adaptability in emerging economies. These are the benefits that derives from our stakeholders from the new system that we're going to use. Now, the rationale consultation inside. The stakeholders have been consulted throughout the study. We concentrated more on employers, which their insight is that they demand practical skills, workplace discipline, and adaptability. The lecturers also need industry exposure to keep continent relevant. And students, they want a clear employment and entrepreneurial pathways. So these are the three stakeholders that we looked into, and then we did different sorts to get their insight. We did the interview, we did survey, we visited employers, we did focus groups, we had different workshops that we have with all the staff members, and we did the same with the management in order to source all this insight of our stakeholders. Now, we have to link our vision and mission with the dual approach. We know very well that our vision at Motheo is the gateway to employability. Now, with this new system, Motheo embraces employability and workplace readiness in all programs. Our mission normally concentrates on delivery quality education, become market responsive with the new programs for employment and self-employment. Now, the dual approach model operationalizes our vision via industry co-design curricula and occupational programs. We are all familiar with QCTO programs, where we have three components. First component is the knowledge component. The second one is the practical component. The last one is the workplace. So students go through those three components for them to get a qualification. Now, we as the college, we need to align ourselves with the new objectives of GNU. For sure we are familiar with the new objectives of GNU. There are three of them. Now, as Motheo, we need to have SMART objectives so that they are measurable, they are obtainable, I think so, realistic, and time-bound. Now, the first one, dual delivery in 5 priority programs by 2028. That's the first objective that we have. We have about 15 priority programs that we have in South Africa. That's why the other universities and colleges were part of the COS, because it falls under the 13 priority programs. Now, measurable, we want 70% of the students that graduate to be employed within the first 12 months after they completed with the college. We want 50% formal industry agreements for placement and lecturer exposure. 50 plus might be a lot, but we already have a lot of partners, so we add on that. That's why we say through the 2025 to 2028, we are going to have more than 50, because we have a lot of students that we have placed, and a lot of our staff, they need industrial exposure. Realistic. We're going to start with a pilot project with some strong employers and city support. So we're going to start with what we have at disposal. Then we go from there. time bound. We are going to start with a pilot by the end of 2026. Remember, 2025 is the planning phase. 2026, we do pilot and full rollout by 2028, as our strat plan is for these 4 years. Now the action plan. We have a lot of action plan, then I couldn't put everything on the slide. But with human resource, we are going to recruit and retain lecturers with current industry expertise as one of the requirements for accreditation of occupational programs. We need to have annual industry secondments to lecturers, as I highlighted. And we have to train the workplace mentors in pedagogy. 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 Good, teacher, I see. And assessment. The reason why we have to train the mentors at workplace, we need the mentors to know exactly what they have to assess students on, what they have to train students on. Finance, we have to secure more DHET subsidies, even if we cannot negotiate subsidies. But we need to leverage CETA grants for work integrated learning. And we have to attract the donors or industry sponsorship. And the operational strategy. We have to standardize training plans and assessment tools. Melbourne does that quite well. And upgrade simulation labs and ICT infrastructure. Remember I said we can replace workplace with the technology. We can have a simulation lab that we can use to give students practicals. And lastly, we have to establish work-based learning office for coordination and quality mentoring. At the moment, Mercy Lemeni and Ndatismpe is doing that, but we need to develop a fully-fledged office that will deal with that, with all the resources that they will need. The alignment according to Gateway to Employability. I said graduates must live with qualification and workplace experience. I said we need to respond to the needs of the market. In order to do that, we must have curricula that reflect current tech and processes. And the community impact. We need to have a positive impact to the community by supporting their local economic development and their mobility. Now, in everything that we do, there are risks that are involved. This is some of the risks that we might be faced with as we start this new journey of dual approach. The first one, lack of funding for tuition, infrastructure, stipends, etc. We know that South Africans are not as good as Germany, so we need to have a lot of funding. And Motheo by itself, we have many students. Now, if we have many students that they have to receive stipend, we need to have much more funding. Experienced facilitators. Our facilitators are experienced in teaching. That's why our requirement is you should have a teaching qualification to teach. But for this new approach, we need people that have industry exposure. That's why we have to hire experienced facilitators. Then the workplace. Like I highlighted before, that South Africa is not industrialized like Germany. We'll suffer a little bit in getting the workplace. That's a risk that we have to do. The mentors. I just explained that the mentors at workplaces need to be trained. At the moment, we are running a risk of the mentors that are not trained. They are only doing their work at work. Insurance is one of the risks that we will be faced with, because at workplace, all students should be insured, that whenever there's any mishaps, then the students can be funded. And in conclusion, we talked about dual approach. It's simple. It's a strategic imperative, not just pedagogy. Thanks, Natemina. It's granted in evidence and stakeholder input. It mobilizes resources and partnership to produce truly work-ready graduates. And it's positioning TVET College as a national leader in employability. those are the references that we visited in order to do the strategic plan. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me. Any questions? And please don't ask me if I'm married.
When you said the end. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. I can see that this was a thorough study around dual methods that you mentioned. Now, before I ask a number of questions, let me check with you. Does the study only cater for pedagogy? Because that is what I saw. And leave alone or leaves out andragogy, as it was always the case. We were, as TVET colleges, catering for both adults and children. So when we specifically talk about pedagogy and leave the other side, what does that mean? Are we now going to concentrate on children only, or the adults are also forming part of these developments that are coming in the country?
Unfortunately, with the dual approach is that we're going to apply in TVET colleges. And we know that TVET colleges cater for students and adults. So it covers everybody. So I know that you're asking that will part-time students be able to be placed or workplace. That's why we said we are going to take students to a qualification where they are already working. If a person works as an admin somewhere, we'll do admin and then do practicals at workplace. And then we visit them to check that the knowledge that they learned is comparable with what they are doing at workplace.
Thank you, Mr. Motsamai. I just want to know what is the risk of the college having lower numbers of students in occupational programs, whilst we were having plus or minus 15,000 students in ministerial programs. So is there a risk that we are going to face, and how are we going to try and recover from that risk?
It's true that, like I said before, that our funding model as TVET college is based on the number of the students we have. That's why we get money based on the FTEs, full-time equivalents, that when we register the students. Now, with the dual approach method, students have to do practicals at the workshops. So there will be only 15 students in a workshop. Whilst in the normal ministerial programs, we take more than 30 and above. But with this qualification, we are going to have the rotation. We're going to have other students in class, 15 of them, whilst others are doing practicals, while another 15 are at workplace. Then they'll just rotate like that. So in the long run, we'll have more or less the same numbers that we have. And this will affect our funding model. That is why the occupational programs are much more expensive than the ministerial programs that we are handling at the moment. So the numbers will be covered by the new funding model and the rotation method that we're going to use.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone covered.
Yeah.
That day, Hosanna.
Okay, thank you. You talk about the dual approach, and which you are saying that it focuses on institutional learning and work-based. On institutional learning, are you only referring to the theory component, like in this particular study, or does it also include some practical learning? Because I mean, you know that right now we have different programs, some of which are just theory-based, others that theory and practical.
Dr. Hosanna and colleagues, this method, when we adopt it in South Africa, we need to modify it so that it suits our environment. That is why here they talk about institutional learning and workplace. But with us, like I said, we have three components. We have knowledge, we have practical, and we have the workplace. So the students will do theory in class, go to a lab or simulation lab and do practicals, and when we think that they are ready for workplace, then they go out for a workplace. We need them when they get to workplace. We mustn't overburden the employers to train our students from scratch. They should be at least having some practicals and know at least what to do. I was going to ask you if you would address it.
Yes, it's because I'm trying to reduce the number of questions I've been having while you were presenting. One of my first questions is about the simulation and the artificial intelligence part. We are going to allow students, like you said, they must go to the simulation labs. And I know each and every year, like we did with the